The Bridgerton Season 4 Part 2 trailer just dropped, and Episode 5 is not here to play nice. Tension is rising, secrets are getting louder, and some of these relationships, they are hanging by a single thread. I've watched the trailer more times than I'd like to admit, and there are details we need to talk about, because Episode 5 might be the turning point for everyone. Let's start with the tension that refuses to calm down. Francesca, John, and Michaela. In the trailer, we see the three of them in the same space again, dressed beautifully, surrounded by society, but emotionally, it's a battlefield. Francesca is standing beside her husband, doing everything right, looking composed, playing her role perfectly. But then there's Michaela, watching, observing, and the way she looks at Francesca, that is not casual, that is not friendly, that is loaded. And what makes it even more intense is that Francesca feels it. You can see it in the way she holds herself, slightly stiff, slightly distracted, like her mind is somewhere else entirely. The air between them feels heavier than before, and I don't think that's accidental. Episode 5 is where I believe Francesca's internal struggle will finally start cracking through the surface. In Part 1, she was confused, curious, a little shaken by Michaela's presence, but now it feels deeper. In one moment from the trailer, we see Francesca alone at night again, walking through dim corridors lit only by candlelight. And I cannot stop thinking about why she's awake. Who is she thinking about? Because this does not feel like random insomnia. This feels like someone wrestling with feelings they don't want to name. And if she is searching for Michaela in that moment, even subconsciously, that changes everything. What makes this storyline so powerful is the contrast between Francesca and Michaela. Francesca is quiet, controlled, careful. Michaela is confident, bold, almost daring. She doesn't hide what she feels. And in Episode 5, looks like the moment where logic starts losing. There is also something very telling about how John is framed in the trailer. He seems present, attentive, kind as always. And that almost makes it worse, because there is no villain here. No cruel husband, no dramatic betrayal, just a woman slowly realizing that her heart may not be where she thought it was. And that realization, that is terrifying. I think Episode 5 might give us the first real moment where Francesca understands that what she feels for Michaela is not admiration. It's not curiosity. It's something she cannot ignore anymore. And if that realization happens during an intimate moment with her husband, like I suspect it might, then we are entering very dangerous territory. The trailer also hints at a confrontation. Not loud, not explosive, but emotional. I wouldn't be surprised if Michaela finally says something that forces Francesca to confront the truth. Maybe not a confession, maybe not yet, but enough to make Francesca question everything she thought she knew about herself. And once that door opens, it cannot be closed. Episode 5 feels like the calm before a storm that is about to tear through their lives in Part 2. And the way the music builds in the trailer during their scenes, it's intentional. It feels like something forbidden is growing, slowly but surely. The kind of connection that starts in silence but becomes impossible to ignore. By the end of Episode 5, I don't think we'll have resolution. I think we'll have chaos, emotional chaos, the kind that keeps you staring at the screen long after the episode ends. And this is just one storyline. If you think that's intense, wait until we talk about what's happening inside the Bridgerton house itself. And speaking of chaos inside the Bridgerton house, we need to talk about Violet and Marcus, because what started as quiet curiosity in Part 1 is now turning into something much more real, much more dangerous, and honestly, much more exciting. In the Part 2 trailer, we see Violet in a way we haven't seen her in a very long time. She looks alive, not just existing, not just being the perfect mother, but truly alive. There's a softness in her expressions, but also this nervous energy, like she knows she's stepping into unfamiliar territory. And Marcus is right there with her, calm, confident, intentional. The way he looks at her makes it very clear that this is not temporary. He is serious about her. What makes this so important is that Violet herself didn't expect this. For so long, she defined herself through her past, through her late husband, through her children. She wasn't looking for anything new. She had accepted her life as it was. But Marcus changed that. He didn't force anything. He simply appeared, understood her, and allowed her to feel seen again. And now in episode 5, I believe we're going to see Violet struggle with what that means. Because allowing herself to feel again also means allowing herself to be vulnerable again. And that's terrifying. In one moment from the trailer, we see them in another intimate setting, close enough that you can feel the tension between them even without hearing a word. And Violet looks both excited and unsure at the same time. Like she wants this, but she's also afraid of what comes next. Because this isn't just about romance. This affects her family, her children, her identity. She's not just Violet, she's Mama Bridgerton. And those two versions of herself may start to clash in episode 5. What's even more interesting is that Violet doesn't seem as guarded anymore. In part 1, she was cautious, careful, testing the waters. But now, there's a shift. She's allowing herself to enjoy his presence, to smile more, to relax. And that kind of emotional shift doesn't go unnoticed, especially not in a house full of observant children. Episode 5 might be the moment when someone starts to suspect that something is happening. Maybe it's the way she reacts when Marcus's name is mentioned. Maybe it's the way she seems distracted. Or maybe it's simply the fact that she seems happier than usual. And happiness in the Bridgerton world rarely stays simple. There's also the question of Marcus's intentions. But from everything we've seen, he isn't playing games. He respects her, he values her, and he's patient with her, which makes him incredibly dangerous in the best way possible. Because he's not rushing her, he's letting her come to him on her own terms, and that creates a connection that feels real, solid, and lasting. Episode 5 could be where that connection deepens even further, where words are said that cannot be taken back. I also think Violet herself is starting to realize that this isn't just a passing feeling. This isn't just companionship. This is the possibility of love again. And that realization alone can change everything. It can change how she sees her future, how she sees herself, and how she allows others to see her. But with love in Bridgerton, there is always risk, always consequences, always someone watching. And if Violet and Marcus continue down this path, it's only a matter of time before the rest of the family finds out. And when they do, things may not be as simple as Violet hopes, because while her children want her happiness, seeing her move forward may be harder than expected. Episode 5 feels like the moment where Violet stops standing on the edge and finally takes a step forward. Now we need to talk about the situation that is quietly turning into one of the most painful storylines of the season: Benedict and Sophie. Because after everything that happened in part 1, nothing between them is the same anymore. That moment when Benedict offered Sophie a life as his mistress instead of his wife didn't just hurt her, it broke something. And the part 2 trailer makes it very clear that episode 5 will deal with the consequences of that choice. In the trailer, we see Benedict trying to approach Sophie again. His posture is different now, less confident, less certain. There's hesitation in the way he stands near her, like he doesn't know if he's even allowed to be close to her anymore. And Sophie? She's not the same either. She's colder, more distant. Not because she stopped caring, but because she cares too much. She's protecting herself. When she tells him they were simply carried away, you can tell she doesn't believe her own words. She's trying to convince herself just as much as she's trying to convince him. Because admitting the truth would hurt too much. What makes this even more heartbreaking is that Benedict doesn't fully understand the damage he caused. In his mind, he offered her everything he could within the limits of society. He thought he was being honest. He thought he was giving her security, comfort, and love in the only way he believed possible. But what he failed to understand is that Sophie never wanted half of his love. She never wanted to exist in the shadows. She wanted to be chosen fully, openly, without shame. And episode 5 is where that emotional gap between them becomes impossible to ignore. There's also a moment in the trailer where Sophie speaks to Violet, mentioning that she may leave to work in another house. And the way she says it feels final. Like she's already preparing herself to walk away. Not just from the house, but from Benedict. From the life she allowed herself to imagine for a brief moment. Violet's reaction says everything. She looks saddened, almost concerned, like she knows there's more behind Sophie's decision. Violet has always been observant, and I believe she already suspects that something emotional happened between Sophie and her son. Episode 5 could be the moment where Sophie seriously considers leaving for good. And that possibility alone will shake Benedict. Because up until now, he believed she would always be there. He believed he had time. But the reality of losing her, that's different. That's when panic starts to set in. That's when denial turns into desperation. We also see Benedict alone in one scene, and there's a heaviness to him. He looks like someone replaying every word, every moment, every mistake in his mind. And for the first time, he may begin to realize that love is not something you can control or reshape to fit society's rules. Love demands risk. It demands sacrifice. And Benedict has not yet decided if he's brave enough to make that sacrifice. What makes episode 5 so crucial is that this is the emotional breaking point. Sophie is trying to move forward, even if it destroys her inside, and Benedict is stuck between the world he was raised in and the feelings he cannot deny anymore. He loves her. That much is clear. But loving her privately is no longer enough, and Sophie will not settle for less. There's also tension building in the way they avoid each other. Silence becomes louder than words. Every glance they don't share says more than any confession could. And in Bridgerton, silence like that never lasts forever. It always leads to something explosive. By the end of episode 5, I don't think their situation will be resolved. I think it will get worse. Because Benedict is only just beginning to understand what he stands to lose, and Sophie is only just beginning to accept that she may have to walk away from the man she loves. And once that distance grows, closing it again becomes much harder than anyone expects. And just when you think the emotional tension couldn't get any worse, episode 5 looks like it's going to test every single character at the same time. Because part 2 is not just about romance, it's about consequences. And the trailer makes it very clear that the calm, polished world of the Tun is starting to crack. Let's go back to Francesca for a moment, because her storyline doesn't exist in isolation. The more her connection with Michaela grows, the more complicated her marriage becomes. In the trailer, there's a brief moment where Francesca looks completely overwhelmed in the middle of a crowded room. Everyone around her is smiling, dancing, enjoying themselves, but she looks distant, like the noise is fading and all she can hear is her own heartbeat. That is not the face of someone who is content. That is someone standing at the edge of a realization she cannot undo. And what makes it even more intense is that Michaela doesn't seem afraid. If anything, she looks more certain, more grounded in what she feels. There's a difference between them now. Francesca is spiraling internally, while Michaela appears steady, almost patient, as if she knows Francesca will eventually have to face the truth. And episode 5 might be the moment where that truth becomes too loud to ignore. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a scene where Francesca and Michaela are finally alone long enough for the tension to shift into something undeniable. Not dramatic, not reckless, but honest. The kind of conversation where one sentence changes everything. And if that happens, it will not just affect Francesca emotionally, it will affect her entire future. Because once she admits, even silently, that her heart is elsewhere, there is no going back to how things were. At the same time, the Bridgerton family dynamic is subtly shifting. There's a sense in the trailer that multiple secrets are floating under the surface. Violet stepping into a new romance, Benedict questioning his beliefs, Francesca battling forbidden feelings. And the thing about secrets in this family, they never stay hidden for long. There's also a growing theme in episode 5 that feels impossible to ignore: choice. Every character is being pushed toward one. Francesca must choose between stability and truth. Benedict must choose between society and love. Violet must choose between fear and happiness. And these are not small choices. These are life-altering ones. The trailer's pacing hints that episode 5 will be slower in some moments, but emotionally explosive underneath. It feels like the episode where conversations happen behind closed doors, where characters say things they've been holding in for too long, where eye contact lasts a second too long, where someone walks away before they say something they can't take back. And let's not forget the pressure of society itself. The Tun is always watching, always judging. Any wrong move can turn into scandal. And with emotions running this high, it's only a matter of time before someone slips. Episode 5 might not give us a full public scandal yet, but it will absolutely set the stage for one. You can feel it building. What makes this Part 2 trailer so powerful is that it doesn't rely on dramatic shouting or huge confrontations. It relies on tension, on longing, on the kind of emotional restraint that makes every small gesture feel massive. And episode 5 feels like the episode where restraint starts to break. By the time the credits roll, I think at least one character will have made a decision they can't undo. And that decision will send shockwaves through the rest of the season. Because once domino falls in the Bridgerton world, the rest don't stay standing for long. And if there's one thing the Bridgerton Season 4 Part 2 trailer makes clear, it's that episode 5 is not the resolution, it's the ignition. This is the episode where emotions stop hiding and start demanding to be seen. Every character we've talked about is standing at a point where pretending is no longer enough. And once pretending stops, everything changes. Let's start with Benedict, because his emotional state in the trailer feels like someone slowly realizing he made the biggest mistake of his life. Up until now, he believed he was in control. He believed he understood the rules of his world and how to bend them without breaking them. But Sophie walking away challenges that belief completely. There's a moment where he looks at her, and you can see it in his eyes. Fear, not of scandal, not of society, but of losing her. And that kind of fear transforms people. It forces them to confront truths they've been avoiding. Episode the 5th of May be the moment where Benedict stops lying to himself about what Sophie truly means to him. And Sophie, on the other hand, is trying to be strong. But strength doesn't erase pain. She's forcing herself to create distance because she knows staying close to him will only hurt more. But distance has consequences, because absence doesn't always weaken feelings. Sometimes, it makes them impossible to ignore. Benedict being unable to reach her emotionally may finally push him toward a decision he never thought he'd have to make, a decision that could redefine his entire future. At the same time, Francesca's emotional journey is approaching a breaking point. Episode 5 feels like the moment where denial begins to collapse. She can continue playing her role, continue pretending everything is normal, but internally, something has already shifted. And Michaela's presence only accelerates that shift. Michaela isn't forcing anything. She isn't demanding anything, but her existence alone challenges everything Francesca thought she understood about herself. And that kind of internal conflict cannot stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, it surfaces. And when it does, it changes everything. And then there's Violet, quietly stepping into a new chapter of her life while everything else around her feels uncertain. Her connection with Marcus represents hope. But hope requires courage, especially for someone who has spent so long protecting herself emotionally. Episode the 5th of May be where she finally allows herself to believe that happiness is still possible for her. And that belief alone is powerful enough to shift the emotional balance of the entire family. What connects all of these storylines is vulnerability. Every character is exposed in some way. Benedict is exposed emotionally, Francesca is exposed internally, Violet is exposed romantically, and Sophie is exposed in her heartbreak. No one is safe behind emotional walls anymore. And that's what makes episode 5 so important. It's the episode where emotional truths stop whispering and start speaking clearly. But the most dangerous part of episode 5 isn't what happens, it's what begins. Because once these emotional doors open, they cannot be closed again.